All right. So we have two tasks for today. One is kind of a background or almost a prerequisite to getting into our main task. And then we have our main task. So the overall goal for today, the assignment that you guys are going to be working on, is to actually go in and start to research some of the major reading assessments that are out there. This is not going to be an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination, but it gets you a good start into looking at the publishers' websites, hopefully finding some research, seeing what people are saying, pros and cons about the different reading assessments that are out there, as well as kind of what each of them purports to cover. All right. As we'll see, it's very challenging in a reading assessment to do everything really well. Just as with a curriculum, it's really challenging to do everything really well. Same thing goes with an assessment. So we're going to see, hopefully, be able to kind of tease apart some of the strengths, weaknesses, limitations of these different assessments that are out there. All right. You're going to be mixed up into different groups. I'll probably just like number you guys off. So you will have some elementary and some secondary in each group. I want you to try and look at what is covered on both ends. When you look at the questions that are asked, not every assessment is going to have a bit like an affirmative, like a full answer for each of those questions because of those limitations. But I want to make sure that you're finding out if it says this is not for secondary, that's okay. If it says this is not for comprehension or for phonics or phonemic awareness, that's okay. But I want you to find that information, okay? So that's what we're going to be jumping into. Before we can do that, though, I couldn't help myself. We have to talk about the concept of validity and reliability in assessment. Before we can actually look at assessments, we have to understand these two concepts. And I really like these two concepts. I think they're very, very important. I hate teaching them to practitioners because it's just like this numbers game that no one cares about, that no one's ever going to like go at the teacher level, go and research and find out. But I think it's so important to understand what it's looking at and why it's important, okay? So I'm not gonna go through this PowerPoint. This PowerPoint is on Moodle. Take a look at it, do some research. Lots of people on the internet can say, can tell you about it in a much more eloquent way than I can. But I can give you the gist, all right? So when we have an assessment, we have to know going in, we are not going to be able to tell how strong fundamentally, how strong an assessment is on our own, right? We're given a test, we're given a packet, we're given what we have to give to our children almost all the time. The small sliver of time that we're not given those things, we have to make it up ourselves. When it comes to figuring out how accurate, how meaningful, how robust these things are, when we make assessments ourselves, we have no way of knowing that. If I'm making up an assessment on third grade reading skills, doesn't matter how long I've been been teaching or practicing, who the hell am I to say that these questions are the best questions? You get what I'm saying there? That makes sense? When we're given the out-of-the-box assessments, we trust that someone else asked those questions. We trust that this is a good assessment, right? Otherwise, I mean, to the same degree that we trust that the questions that we're making up are good questions, we trust that someone else came up with good questions. But there are actual numbers and there's actual data to support how strong those assessments are when they come out of the box, how reliable and how valid those assessments are. There's a third measure, bias. It's very important. It's different. We're not going to cover it right now. But when you look up measures of internal accuracy, it's reliability, validity, and bias. Those are the three things that you look at. All right. So reliability and validity. You cannot have an assessment that means anything without those two things. You can get information, but what you say about that information is so limited if you don't have some measure of reliability and validity. All right. At its core, that was weird. At its core, I lost my train of thought. No idea. Okay. What does, so when I say reliability, let's start there. What does that mean to you guys? Doesn't have to be in an assessment context. If someone or something is reliable, what does that mean? They're trustworthy. Credible. Okay, good. They're always there, right? You want your refrigerator to be reliable. You want your best friend to be reliable. You want your parents to be reliable. You want your car to be reliable. You want them to work in the same way every single time you take them. All right? Not a big jump. Apply that to assessment. I want my assessment to work the same way every single time I give it. Doesn't matter if I'm giving it to population A or B or C. Within reason, age group A, B, or C. Males, females, African American, white, Asian. I want it to react the same way every single time. If it changes based on some of those factors, it's not a reliable assessment. I'm an only child. I can't answer this question. How many of you had parents that acted one way towards you and another way towards a sibling? I hear that's a thing that happens all the time. Those parents, if we apply the educational assessment idea, are not acting reliably between those siblings. That's part of reliability, right? Between different people. How many of you who just raised your hand, were your parents always one way to you and always another way to your sibling, like always, right? So that's a form of reliability. They are reliably one way to you and reliably one way to someone else. So in that respect, there is reliability there. So there's a couple of different types of reliability. When it comes to educational assessment, we need both of those. So we need our parents to treat me the same way every time. And hopefully they treat my non-existent brother the exact same way as they treat me every single time. So that way that we are being assessed the same way every single opportunity, okay? If we don't have reliability, then fundamentally, what does that change about how we analyze things? So when we give an assessment, we get a piece of data. We have a single data point now, we have a score. If we don't have reliability, what does that mean about that score? Obviously, we can't interpret it, right? But why? While you're pondering what the hell I just said, think back to the definition of assessment that I gave on day one. Educational variables of interest. All right, that's your data point, your educational variable of interest, whatever it is that I assess. when I give an assessment, that variable is the variable. That thing that I'm asking, of interest, is the variable that I'm measuring. If my assessment is not reliable, it changes, then the assessment becomes a variable in and of itself. So I have two variables. I have the subject matter and the assessment. And if they're both moving, I don't know what's impacting my score. I don't know if it's what the child knows, or I don't know if it's the score. I don't know if it's how I behaved, or if it's my parents' mood that's affecting what I get. All right? So we have to have assessments that are reliable. Make sense? Good. Validity. A little bit more complex. What does validity or something being valid mean to you? Okay, good.
Being appropriate for a situation.
Okay.
Accuracy.
Okay, good. I like all three of those. Validity is interesting in how you actually apply the word, right? So when you talk about accuracy, when you talk about applicable, everything is accurate to something, right? Everything is applicable to something, right? Like if I give you the number 5, that's accurate somewhere. That's applicable somewhere. 3 + 2, 5 × 1. Those are accurate and applicable things for the answer of 5, right? What validity is looking at is the relationship between the input and the output. And what's valid is the thing that goes in the middle. If I score this, then it means that. If I score, what's the range on the ACT? 32, 36, 36. Okay. If I score a 30 on the ACT, that's a good score, right? Okay, great. If I score a 30 on the ACT, then I should do well in college. The validity there is the if-then statement. If that if-then statement is not accurate, if it's not applicable, then I don't have validity. If I score well on this reading test, then I go into this reading group. If I then fail in that reading group, then that score was not predictive of my success. You guys got that? The SAT about 15 years ago, 10 years ago, had a major validity issue, like serious validity issue. SAT, was the biggest college exam in the country for decades. Students who were doing well on the SAT were failing out of college at higher rates than those who were doing poorly to a point on the SAT. So now a lower score on the SAT to some extent was more predictive of success in college. The SAT was no longer valid. All right, the meaning of the SAT was no longer an accurate predictor of what it was hoping to predict. So what did they do? They had to retool the whole exam, and it has since been revalidated. So when we take that to our current educational assessments, we're basically saying, if you score well on this assessment, you know the material, you'll be able to use the material, you'll be able to build upon the material, so on and so forth. We want to be able to make educational decisions based on the scores of our assessment. In order to make those decisions and be confident in those decisions, the assessments have to be valid. Make sense? Reliability, it's consistent, valid, it's accurate. Those are two pieces that we have to understand as we start to look up some assessment pieces or assessment tools, all right? As you guys go and start doing research on the tools that I'm gonna assign to you guys, you're gonna be looking for comments about reliability and validity. They should be smack dab on the publisher's website. If you have a good tool, they will broadcast it to the world. There might be other pieces of information that say, we're not so sure. I want you to try and find those as well. All right, sound good? Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to pause the recording for a second. All right, so for the activity, what are we going to be doing? So you guys are going to be broadly researching the assessment that you're given, all right? I have specific questions here. If you find yourselves going down a different path or really want to go in depth on one or a couple of the questions here, I'm okay with that. These are guidelines and suggestions. I do not need you to check each box, all right? My goal is for you to basically put yourself in a teacher's position or an administrator's position where you are researching the quality of the assessments that are available to you. So someone has said, I need you to give me information on the QRI or DIBELS or AIMSWeb so we can decide whether or not we're going to use it. That's kind of where we're headed. You are looking for a well-rounded assessment, an assessment that is valid and reliable, and that has materials or that is meaningful to you and your school. Simple enough, right? All right. What's available to you in terms of identifying all of this information? You have for DIBELS, like I said, there are a lot of resources on their website. So just go straight to their website, which is on the Moodle page. QRI, Pearson has some resources. It's not really robust, but you guys have manuals in front of you. So use that. But use what the publisher says about their own material, all right? For the QRI people, I actually have the first couple chapters downloaded as PDF. I will run to my office and put those on Moodle for you guys so that you guys can see them. Second, you have Google Scholar. Google Scholar is a really good tool for this type of search to find information about reliability and validity, to see what different studies say about comprehension or fluency or vocabulary, the different components of reading. The studies themselves and what they say about how they use and what they say about the assessments are not always, it's not going to like jump out at you in the title. So if you put QRI 5 into Google Scholar, you're going to get some random results. If you put DIBELS oral reading fluency, you're going to get some more specific things. You're going to have to really look through what the articles are saying. Some of them compare one assessment to the other. Some look at one part of the assessment and not another. So you're really pulling all the information together. Using the Nichols Library database website. Has anyone used that before? Okay, good. I think that it's probably going to be a little bit more of a challenge to find the specific things on there just because of how they search, but try it, number one. If there's an article that you want, that you find on Google Scholar or on the publisher's website that you want to read more about, the Nichols website should be able to access that for you. All right. So you are commenting on commentary on validity and reliability, just summarizing what you find, and discuss how or if the assessment covers each of the 5 components of reading. So I want to know what the different sources say about those different components. Again, I keep it pretty nebulous. Everyone's found enough information on this in the past to get a meaningful result. I will fully say that it's not the most straightforward assignment to, like, you can't just check it off, right? It's not just answer this, answer this, answer this. The research is hard to find, but it is important, I think, to be able to go out there and find it. Okay? Sound good? Any questions? All right. So QRI, I'll go put that. It's like chapter, the first like 20 pages, which is the intro chapters on Moodle, so that you can all see that. And we'll go from there.